Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Adrian's Digital Basement. On today's video, we're going to be taking a look at something that, well, I don't really know much about. It's called the Casablanca, and I'm not even sure who makes this thing. As far as I'm aware, this thing is an Amiga on the inside. I think it's a video editor solution or video titler, something like that. And I think it runs Amiga OS. But as far as I'm aware, it doesn't actually have any Amiga chips in there, no special chipset. So it's not really an Amiga other than the operating system it's running is an Amiga. So I think in this video, I just want to kind of take a look at this thing. I don't have any information about it. I don't have any keyboards or accessories or anything else to plug into it. So I think the best we can expect out of this video is just really an exploration of this thing and a look on the inside. I'll take it apart. We'll see if we can get it to kind of show any signs of life, and maybe there's more to the Amiga connection than was reported on the internet. So we'll figure that out by opening this thing up. So without further ado, let's get right to it. Well, here's the unit. On the front, there's a flip down lid, which on the left side has a button, I assume a power button. Looks like it has some type of a screen. I think it's a vacuum fluorescent display that shows the status of the device. There is a little flip down lid over on the left side, and it just exposes what you can see behind the cover if you flip it down. Looks like we have S-video and I suppose audio jacks. Here in the bottom right corner, it just says Casablanca. And as far as I'm aware, that's the only branding on the whole unit. There's nothing else I've ever seen, unless there's something on the bottom, I suppose. Nope. If you flip down the lid, which is attached with these magnets, we see those same ports we saw a moment ago through that little flap. There's a floppy drive and looks like a removable hard drive tray. And the whole thing is very janky and it's kind of jammed in there. Not sure if there's actually a hard drive in there or not. Oh, look at that. I was able to jiggle it and get it out. There is a hard drive in there. That's great. It's probably SCSI. Yes, it looks like it's a SCSI drive. We have a quantum drive there. So that's great. So there's a potential chance of us getting the whole thing working. I can see inside a memory module. It's in there properly. There's one SIM installed. There's a fan with a bunch of dust, motherboard, and some stuff in the back. We'll open this up and look at it in a second. The entire case is metal, so it's pretty solid construction. It looks a lot like an audio or AV component. It's got, large round feet on it. On the back of the unit, we have an IEC mains input with a voltage switch. There's a mini DV input. So it kind of shows this thing is more modern than any Amiga was. I don't think any Amiga was released in the time when mini DV existed. We have a SCART connector. It says SCART out with RGB. There looks like to be parallel and 2 serial ports. Looks like we have a normal 9-pin DIN connector, which my assumption is this is a standard like PC style keyboard, although maybe it's Amiga format, who knows? Because older Amigas like the 2000 and 3000s used the same DIN connector. The 4000 used more like a PS2 port. We do have audio out, we have audio in, S-video in, S-video out. Now, as I mentioned in the intro, I was given this with no information other than it's maybe an Amiga on the inside. That's the extent of what I know about it. And I did a quick Google just to kind of see if I could find anything. And I did find a thread on Reddit, people talking about it. I just don't think there's a whole lot of information about this out there on the internet. When I first thought about making a video about this thing, I was kind of excited to think that, wow, these screws are in really tight. I was excited to know that maybe this had a lot of Amiga lineage and we could somehow do something with that. But my hopes were dashed when I found that Reddit thread that made it seem like there's really nothing much Amiga-like about this thing whatsoever. We are going to see inside of this thing together. I have not opened this up since I've had it, and I've had this for a number of years. What are we going to see inside the Casablanca? I'm not sure what's shaking around in here. We'll figure that out in a moment. Oh, there's part of it. I think this was some kind of a ferrite thing, probably on top of, like, say, the SCSI cable that has come apart. Sounds like the other half of this thing is still underneath somewhere in here. So hopefully no one turned this thing on while that was floating around in there. Okay, so starting off, just try to get a lay of the land. There's a 68040 processor down there. It looks like it's a 25 megahertz version. I'll pull this apart in a moment. This obviously is an add-on card that has or handles all the video capture. We got a little ribbon cable that goes to the front panel for the video, But we have a Zoran chip. This is probably like a hardware decoder, encoder, MPEG encoder, decoder that is, and quick logic chips, whatever those are. Another Zoran chip. We have a chip that was sanded off, so I can't read the part number on that. An analog devices IC, and judging by the fact that it's close to the inputs, this is the input side. That is probably digitizing the video, and then all the compression and stuff is handled on this card. There's a serial number down here, 015488. Kind of tells us that there were probably 15,000 of these, or more potentially. We got a little live spider right here, little friend. He's not just a dead guy, he's actually alive. Sorry about that. I'll just leave you alone for now while I get all the fasteners out. Okay, that popped off. I assume I can just slide this out towards me. Yes, there we go. So there's our video board. I didn't mention the Philips IC over here, SAA7182A, probably the RGB / composite video / S-video encoder. So that's going to take all the digital signals here and convert that to the analog output for hooking up to your stuff. What's interesting is the DV port seems to have an expansion header there, and if we take a look at the back, yep, that obviously is not used on this particular model, optional. There must have been another board that you needed, probably plugged into this, and was an extra encoder for the mini DV signals. Who knows if that was for inputs and output, since that type of connector can do both. The only other marking on here that's potentially interesting, it says LBOSA-M. And here's the rest of the system. There's the other half of our ferrite bead off the SCSI cable. Down here on the very edge, it says Casablanca version 1.3 MacroSystem. That must be the manufacturer of this particular system. Here's another little piece of plastic. This maybe was holding on that ferrite thing to the SCSI cable. This cable here is obviously the floppy drive connector. And oddly enough, there's another one underneath, or another connector that looks like it's a similar number of pins. Actually, no, not a similar number of pins. Maybe that would be for, I don't actually know. It's hooked up to this SMC floppy drive controller IC as well, though. Both of these are. So the fact that this is not using, say, a custom chip for the floppy drive interface implies that this does not use Amiga disk format. It's probably just using normal MFM encoding. Now, oddly enough, there's not a lot going on this motherboard at all. There's a Sim BIOS logic chip over here that's almost certainly the SCSI controller, 68040. Then we have this quick logic IC and the Altera, probably a CPLD or early FPGA, I suppose. Floppy drive controller. There is, it's a little hard to see, it's underneath here, but we have a 8-bit EEPROM, and then we have two 16-bit EEPROMs. So I'll definitely have to dump these so we can take a look at like what's going on exactly. It seems like maybe earlier versions of this, maybe precursors to the Casablanca series, had a more complex chipset than what we have here. There's just not a lot going on. Thinking that maybe these are GALs, these two chips, and maybe this one's another CPLD. It just says Casa_DC on it. There's our RAM stick, made in Germany, or assembled in Germany at least. We have a ribbon cable here that goes to the front panel. That's for that display that I mentioned I think this thing has. We have another ribbon cable there that seems to make its way over to this board, which I'm thinking is simply just for soft power on off. Another serial number sticker, but it looks like a big relay there. Power goes into this, then it goes to the switch mode power supply that runs the whole system. So I guess that's for that soft power on button we have on the front of the unit, and maybe there's software control once you're booted up into the OS. Oddly enough, there was one loose fastener. The main system motherboard mainly has tantalums on it, so it doesn't have any electrolytic caps that are going to leak. This one, on the other hand, we do have some small caps, and I'm going to wager they all look like they have actually leaked a little bit. Looking around for date codes, Quick Logic IC had 1997 31st week. That coincides with the date codes on both our ROMs, also 1997 8th week in the case of these, or maybe August, I'm not sure. Switch mode power supply looks relatively standard affair, but I don't like these brown caps. These are the same type that leak on all sorts of things. So I'll just quickly remove this and we'll just take a quick look just to see if there's a whole bunch of carnage on the bottom side with those leaky caps, if they're leaking at all. They're not bulging on the top, so maybe they're fine. Okay, what do we see on the underside? Oh, it looks fine. Oh yeah, no issues on the bottom side at least. Usually when they start to leak, you get a bunch of mess on the bottom. Yeah, everything looks fine. Okay, well that's good to know. The power supply is super run-of-the-mill. It's just an Aztec. It's plus 5 volts at, looks like 8 amps, plus 12 volts, and minus 12 volts. So it'd be easy to replace this if this were bad. This is a completely standard form factor as well, and the connector is all standard as well. I'm pretty sure I have some of these spares if this needed to be replaced, but I think this PSU is going to be working without issue. So it goes without saying, without this video board installed, obviously we're not going to get any video output since that's all happening on here. It's probably worth me just powering this up as is here, see if there's anything displayed on the front panel, see if any magic smoke gets let out, maybe just see if it even tries to access, say, the floppy drive, something like that. Clearly without the hard drive installed, it's not going to do anything. I'll hook up the Blue SCSI to the hard drive. Hopefully this still spins, and then we can just do initiator mode to make an image of the drive for preservation purposes. Before I power this up, actually, I'm trying to think of the right thing to do. Maybe what I need to do actually is dump the 3 ROM chips, just to make sure in case something goes terribly wrong, at least I've preserved something from this machine. So hopefully I can actually dump these ROMs. These are 27C4002s. I'll be using my 3rd generation TL866, whatever these are called now, and I have this adapter which I bought that allows me to dump these types of chips. In fact, lists what models it supports. 27, might not support this one actually, since that's not listed on here. Well, actually it looks like it is supported, and it's supported without the adapter. When you need the adapter, it actually shows a picture of an adapter plugged into the programmer. It's saying just to put this chip directly into the unit itself. So I will oblige. Let's see if this works. Well, I guess it's working. And one thing to consider is this is a 32-bit system, so it uses 2 of these 16-bit EEPROMs, and we'll have to merge them together if we want to even look at this in, say, a hex editor. So this is what it was able to read out of it. And one thing you can do is if you're not sure if you had a good read, then you can just do verify after you've already read it once. I'm going to turn the volume down so we don't keep hearing that beep out of this thing. So you can do a verify, and what that does is it just compares what's in the buffer to what's in the chip. So it's just going to reread it again. And if you can get a couple of verify passes out of it, then you know that it's getting a good read almost certainly out of the chip. Both of the ROMs have been dumped to the computer, and I'm going to use this utility called ROMWhack, and that allows me to merge or split the files as necessary. So we're going to use /m for byte merge. You specify the 2 input files, and we have the -L, which is the low bytes, and then -H, which is the high bytes. I'm not sure which way we should merge these together. Of course, 68,000 series is big endian, I think, or little endian. I can never remember. So sometimes you just do it both ways, or you can use this program to flip the bytes as well. And I'm going to output to Casablanca CROM LH for low high. There we go. And then we can do it again. We'll just swap them around. And really the difference between these two is that, well, it's 2 16-bit ROMs merged together. So we have 2 bytes, and then you either swap those around depending on which way we merge those files. I'm not really seeing anything on either of these files. I thought we would have seen like Amiga, Commodore, something. All right, so why don't we try using a strings command from Linux? Well, it doesn't look like much of this is anything that makes sense. It's all just sort of gibberish, isn't it? Okay, that was the HL file. We'll do LH, and that's no better. It's kind of what we saw as we scrolled through it. Nothing makes sense. Now there is one more ROM chip, so we'll do that one as well. Maybe that's where all the strings are. Another possibility is this is just like a kickstart thing, and there are no strings in this ROM whatsoever. Basically, the OS is loaded off entirely from the hard drive, and then that's that. I just usually expect to actually see some kind of strings inside a ROM, even if it's just a copyright message. And that I did not see. Okay, the other ROM chip, which is unfortunately blocked by this scaffolding here, has a copyright message, and it also has a serial number on it. So we're hoping that maybe this one contains some messages for us to read. So there it is, U11, and there's the date code, 1997, and the serial number, the same one that we see stuck all over this machine. Yep, it is matching. And on peeling the sticker back, I thought this was an EEPROM, but no, it's a PIC microcontroller. Kind of my assumption is that maybe this thing is programmed per machine with a serial number as sort of a license key thing. And there is our data sheet. Now it does have a built-in ROM. It's EEPROM or ROM-based 8-bit CMOS microcontroller series. I'm very unfamiliar with PIC stuff. But we have a PIC 16C55, 28 pins, has 20 I/O pins, 512 something, and then our RAM, 24K of RAM or bytes, I don't know. Now the programmer here does support reading the PIC16C55, so I suppose I can try that. There's a flash table, which obviously has that ROM code, I think, yeah, because there's not a whole lot in here. And we have config registers as well, plus some device info. Flash size 1024 bytes. Interesting, because I thought it said it had 512 on the datasheet, but whatever. PIC16C55 is definitely what we have. Let's try reading it out. Okay, well, something read back. I don't know if this is valid. There's stuff here, but usually you can't tell something's been protected. I don't know enough about PICs to know if this is protected. CP, copy protected, is that what that means? Maybe, I don't know. So we'll save the default to U11, which I don't know what exactly that saves, and we'll do it again, and I'll pick flash. U11 flash. I actually don't know too much about reading out these microcontrollers with this tool and actually getting a good dump. Or yeah, it looks like I saved 1K of flash and whatever this bin file is. Well, I've repopulated the ICs, so the 2 ROM chips and the PIC. Should we turn this on and just see if this does anything? Obviously the hard drive's not installed, but the floppy drive is connected. And maybe we can see if anything shows up on the screen on the front. There's no video card, so we won't have the video output. I think it's just worth a try to see if anything happens. So it's currently plugged in power, but power is off. So I'm going to turn on this power switch here. 3, 2, 1. Nothing happened at all. I'm going to push the power button on the front. Okay, the fan is going. There's a red light on the front of the hard drive caddy. Hopefully you can just make out the vacuum fluorescent display. It's got a flashing clock on it. You can see how many spaces or characters it has, though. Quite a few there are available. Not much else happening on here, though. The fan is, the fan bearing is bad. It's making some noise. I'm going to push the power button. Okay, so it doesn't turn off. So there's obviously some control. I wonder if the PIC is actually what controls the power on-off. Okay, I held down the button for long enough, and it actually shut off the computer. So it did turn off. I'm going to turn it back on again. Interesting is that the clock stays on all the time while this is powered up, but nothing is displayed on the front other than the clock. Let us check some voltages. Okay, first off, we'll go for 5 volts. 5.09, that looks excellent. 12 volts, which is not used on, I doubt, anything, maybe the hard drive. 12 volts, and I have a feeling nothing uses the minus rail except for possibly something on the video card. But we can check that anyways on the connector going to the motherboard, and that looks perfectly good as well. There's 5 volt going to the motherboard, and there's 12 volts going to the motherboard. So the motherboard's getting all the rails. All of that looks good. It just seems odd that the CPU, I mean, it's not cold, it's slightly warm, but 68040s, 25 megahertz, it should be slightly warm. How about any of these other ICs? If they're warm, they're just the slightest warm. There's no speaker, so there's no obvious diagnostics. I would think that front display might be able to show some diagnostics, but now it just says 0004 AM. I think what's next to do is get the initiator mode working on the Blue SCSI, so jumper installed. I'll have to just check the config file on here. And we'll get this all powered up with the hard drive. Hopefully the hard drive spins, and we can get a good dump of it onto the SD card. Looks like that extra fastener I found floating around in the case was one of the hard drive screws. If you're unfamiliar with the Blue SCSI, it's a hard drive emulator, but the firmware for this has an option for this to become equivalent of a computer. And you plug a hard drive into it, and what it does, it will scan the SCSI bus, and as soon as it finds a hard drive, it will start dumping the contents of this to a file on the SD card. And you don't need a computer to do this, which is great because the format is agnostic. So whatever this is formatted like, it's okay. And we don't risk damaging the file system or corrupting the file system because the Blue SCSI doesn't do anything except simply just read the hard drive out. Now power's hooked up to the hard drive and the Blue SCSI itself. I'm using my ATX power supply. And let's just check the config file that's on the SD card. And it looks like I have this already configured for initiator mode. So SCSI 2 is disabled, but initiator mode is enabled. And I don't know, the rest of this stuff is fine. Debug actually outputs a little bit of debugging information to an attached computer, to the Raspberry Pi Pico. I don't actually need that. So we are just going to set that to 0. because I have a feeling this drive is going to be easy for this thing to image. So we'll just close that. Let's make sure everything is good to go. I don't have any screws or anything underneath the hard drive. That's looking good. Okay, we're ready to go. So I'm going to turn on the power to the power supply. That's spinning up. And there's a blinking LED on the Raspberry Pi Pico. And once it detects the hard drive, I think we'll start seeing different blinking. Uh-oh. That was an unhappy quantum hard drive sound right there. Let's power cycle this again. Yeah, it kind of made some clunky noises while I was talking and then just spun itself down. All right, well, I'm going to spend a moment fiddling with this hard drive to try to get this to stay spinning. Maybe it needs to be upside down. Maybe I'll put it in the freezer for a while. I'll try a few different things and hopefully I can get a good image out of this. But this drive is obviously already past its prime, so to speak. All right, it's the next day, and unfortunately this hard drive is toast. I've done a litany of things to this drive, and none of the things got this thing working. I removed the controller, I reseated the ribbon cable, I put this in the freezer, I put it in the fridge, I heated it up. No matter what I do, when I power this thing up, it always spins up a little bit, makes that clunky noise, and gives up. I have a feeling that one of the heads might be actually broken off and stuck on the disk, because when the drive starts to spin up, you hear sort of a ticking noise that gets faster and faster, and that's indicative of that particular problem. I have run into that before. Luckily though, I think not all is lost, because I've been doing some reading in between last night and today, and it looks like folks have actually archived everything we need to potentially get this thing working again. That is, of course, if the hardware itself works. So my search first brought me to this 5-year-old Reddit thread, which luckily directly links over to another thread, which is this one, which is the definitive MacroSystem Casablanca hack thread, which pretty much has all the information that we would ever need to try to get this thing working and understand how it works. Now back to the Reddit thread, this user talks about the fact that before the Casablanca, the system that we have here, there was something called the Draco, which was a modified Amiga. It appears that all of these systems here, even though these earlier Draco ones were more Amiga-like, I think it was still missing the ECS, OCS, or AGA chipset. And the gist of what this system is, made by MacroSystem, is that it's a non-linear video editing system. So it's designed to take video footage, say off videotape, capture it to the hard drive, and allow you to edit together the footage and then output it back to tape. It's essentially exactly what I do. I just use DaVinci Resolve, then everything is in the digital domain, and of course it then gets uploaded to YouTube instead of tapes. But this system was designed to be used with tape decks, and I think the Casablanca system itself was a cost-reduced version of this Draco system that was sort of in the prosumer space. So it was for high-end consumers to use with their video cameras so they could edit together footage. And we saw the date codes on the system. This was in the late 90s. And at that point, if you were going to try to do this with a computer, this was a pretty costly affair. So this was an all-in-one turnkey solution, all inside a box to allow you to do this. Now it seems that these early systems did use Zorro 2 on them, and I can confirm that because someone posted a video in that same thread, and this is one of the early systems. And those sure look like Zorro 2 slots to me. Now this particular system, the Draco, with a C in this case, not a K like it was in that thread, looks like it's installed in a large AT-style case with a custom motherboard, and as you can see here, it's absolutely running Amiga OS. I mean, that's certainly Amiga OS looking. And as far as my understanding goes with these earlier systems, while it lacked the Amiga chipset, it was still using Amiga OS and retargetable graphics, so it had a high-res graphics card hooked up to a VGA monitor, and you could run any Workbench-compliant program or RTG-compliant Amiga program, and they were 68K based systems, 68040 or 68060, and well, yeah, it looks very, very Amiga-like. And there's another view of the user interface. And again, this thing was able to record video directly to hard drive, and then you edited it together on a timeline, looks very standard there, and then play it back through a regular NTSC or PAL monitor. Now the OS was Movie Shop from MacroSystems, and the date is 1997. So this system, the one shown here, was absolutely being supported well past when Commodore went out of business, and well past the date of this little Casablanca system we're looking at today. Back on the Reddit thread, it says here that this system was available on either Tower or Cube, and I assume the one we saw in that video there was the Cube version. 128 megs of EDO memory. Later versions had an expansion that included FireWire, which is that mini DV we saw on this one. And it looks like a DEC Alpha accelerator was planned, but never released. The Casablanca, which was the evolution of the prosumer version of that Draco system, obviously is going to be cost reduced. It's still Amiga based when it comes to the operating system, but it's a very closed system, and you can't run Workbench or Amiga apps on it like you can with the Draco. And it looks like eventually they ended up moving to Intel processors with the follow-up Avio model of the Casablanca. Now on the same thread, there were actually links to various training videos for the Casablanca system. And these training videos essentially show the user interface of this system. And you can tell that that whole Amiga Workbench style that it had is gone. And it has sort of a user-friendly version. It is multilingual and everything like that, but a user-friendly version designed for digitizing and editing your footage. The whole timeline interface here looks super simplistic though, and probably good from a consumer or prosumer standpoint, but not as good as that Draco, which looked like it had a more modern, like what I would consider usable timeline for creating bigger projects. So I'm definitely bummed to figure out that this particular system, even if I get this thing fully working, is not going to be able to run Amiga Workbench programs, but has Amiga code running inside the ROMs. So that's unfortunate that it's so locked down. Now that Reddit thread also had a link to this English Amiga board thread, which seems to have started in 2014. And this thing has the mother load of information about this particular system. It looks like back in 2014, WinUAE, which is an Amiga emulator, had the ability to then access the hard drive images from these Casablanca systems. And it goes on to confirm that it doesn't have any of the custom Amiga chipsets, which we figured out by looking at it, or even RTG, retargetable graphics support. So what that means is that apps could run full screen on a system that supported RTG, which I guess like the Draco could. So you could run old productivity applications that didn't use the Amiga custom chips, but would just call for, say, 1024 by 768 resolution, 8-bit color, and it would be able to support that. It looks like they did away with even that on the Casablanca. Graphics are pushed to the digitizer's video output by an unknown method. And that Cube Draco in that other video had a VGA connector, and that was showing the user interface, which looked like Amiga Workbench, and that is no longer the case. It's all done through the video output, which is exactly what we saw when we looked at this thing. It must be coming through the RGB port with that SCART connector. It has some hardware and software protection schemes to avoid piracy and duplication. It is little documented, and that was back in 2014. It cannot load Workbench or start a new CLI, that's the command line interface on the Amiga. It seems it's a graphics issue related to the absence of an OCS, original chipset, or retargetable graphics compatibility modes. Looks like about 45,000 of these things were made, and this one's what serial number was 15,000 or so. 16-bit stereo sound. It is a 68040 processor running at 25 megahertz. Looks like there are various known operating systems, and we remember the ROMs that were on this system. I think they were 1.5 ROMs, and it kind of coincides with the dates there. So that would be April 24th, 1997. It looks like they supported this thing all the way up into the 2000s, so a few more years after that. What I don't know for sure is if I can run, say, 3.1.0x with this 2000 release date on the ROMs on this thing. It looks like it is running a modified Kickstart 3.1, version 40.68, and that's these two ROMs, which we have already dumped. They are labeled 1.6 CROM. Oh, maybe that's the ones that we dumped out of here. And then it mentions here the AK ROM, which is actually that PIC 16C55, which is copy protected. So there's not much we can do with that. And it looks like there's a software ROM update, which my assumption means that it actually loads the new Kickstart ROM into RAM, which is very common. That's the way Amigas also did their upgrades if you were stuck with the older Kickstart on your motherboard. It just used up some of the memory on the system. People started decoding the way the hard drive layout is. That's cool. Of course, we don't have a working hard drive here. Also, the CPU on this thing is a 68040RC25V, and I didn't know this about it, but the V version of the chip is a 3.3 volt version of the 68040. Well, that's probably why I never got hot when I powered it up, but it also means that that's not really usable on anything else. I don't think I have any other hardware that uses a 3.3 volt chip. It's always 5 volts, like Macintoshes and Amigas. It looks like it uses a serial mouse, because I wondered about that. I did not actually see a mouse port on there, like a dedicated mouse port, but there was a normal 9-pin serial port. So standard, and it uses an AT style keyboard as well. So that will be easy to replicate. I have both of those, luckily. standard 1.4 meg floppy drive, so that's great. I can replace that if we need to. And it's talking about this Casablanca Motion. That's the Draco Motion clone that has the same hardware ID. I guess that's in the OS, what it sees it as. That would be that attached board that goes on the top with all the video processor chips on it. And we can use EDO memory, 72 pin. I have plenty of that as well if we want to update it. And it looks like we have the OS disk images and stuff like that. So this thread is quite long and goes on for quite a bit. But luckily, I dug through it, and somewhere way deep in there, I found this Google Drive link, which has all the disk images. Thank you very much to the users who have put this stuff together. It would really be great if this were replicated onto somewhere else, like archive.org or say GitHub, because these Google Drive links are very ephemeral and attached to someone's Google account. They could disable it because there's like too much activity on here, and then all of this stuff would be lost. Looks like these are all disk images that were made with a flux imager, like CryoFlux, because this was done back in 2018 before I think the Grease Weasel was out. But luckily for us, it's now very easy to work with these images with HXC, and we can also write these disk images to floppies very easily. And looking at all this stuff here, I'm not even sure where to start, although maybe this CAS FD1, which when we take a look in here is just an MFM disk image of the entire floppy disk. Well, I'm just going to load this disk image into HXC, and we can take a look at the disk image itself once this is loaded. Right, so we know this is a 3.5-inch floppy disk, 135 tracks per inch. There it is, but we do have data. If you look over there on the right side there, as I move this around, you can see the data is on this disk, and we should be able to write this without any issue with the Grease Weasel back to a real floppy, and maybe get this system actually booting and using the Blue SCSI, get this thing up and running. Now, one other tidbit before we get started trying to get this thing working again is I found a post here by 0x, and it's about the ROMs being actually encrypted in checksum. So that would explain why when we looked at them, we saw absolutely nothing on them. If decrypted and patched, the checksum routine will still fail. Machine starts with a boot logo and disk drive initialization seems to access the floppy drive, then halt. So that kind of tells us what this thing should do when I put the video card on there, because I didn't have the video card on there when we tried to power it up before and didn't really do anything. So maybe this is what's necessary. The Draco disk.device contains an OS calls to the checking on the disk drive. Write the serial number to the disk along with the direct IO access to the disk drive. Casablanca.library handles the communication between the system and the microchip PIC16C55, which probably has some kind of like encryption key or something like that in there. And the PIC16C55 holds serial number and hardware configuration parameters depending on some hardware that may have been installed in the system. Handles the front panel VFD display, contains the clock, and does power management. That's actually kind of what I assumed was happening there. And it's not very much unlike the Commander X16. Actually, I'm wearing the shirt for the X16 now. It uses a microcontroller. I think it's an AT Mega microcontroller of some kind, and that's handling the power on, off, and a few other things like that, I2Cs and stuff like that. It doesn't hold a serial number, of course, because there's no copy protection on that. So unless someone finds and removes the anti-tamper routines from the ROM and rewrites some of the disk I/O, the easiest way around this now is to produce new serial clean master disks of the available software. That little blurb makes me think that maybe it won't be possible to use disks on this thing, like they're somehow paired to the system, like these are the installed disks themselves. But on the other hand, I did see a photograph of someone who managed to get their system working, and that's the Casablanca, just like we have here, but it's got a Blue SCSI in it and it's up and running. And there it is. And one thing that's interesting is this has these two optional modules there, with this one on the right, I know after reading that thread, being the mini DV option. So this is what allows it to communicate and capture and digitize footage and probably output the footage back to mini DV equipped camcorders. So that's IEEE 1394, I think it is. I'm not sure what this other module is. Neither of those are installed on this particular unit. And I am seeing that we do have a ROM there. It looks like 397 is the dates on that ROM, 1.3. I think the one that I have is actually newer than that. So that's kind of interesting. So it gives me hope that maybe with these disk images that I have here and just using the Blue SCSI, I can get this thing up and running again so we can at least just see it work. Unfortunately, having read through the thread, it doesn't seem like any hacking has been done to kind of reverse the protection and allow us to use more Amiga stuff on here. And I think the fact that this particular unit is missing the RTG graphics facilities like the larger version had, any hope of actually using this like a normal Amiga is completely gone. So I think the next step, and I just have the screws in here, next step is put this thing back together and try to get it to at least show that boot screen that was mentioned in that little post. I bet people have been watching this and wanting me to get rid of this little bit of dirt here for a while. Now, one thing there is to consider here is I'm going to wager that these caps have leaked. You see how the dust is sort of sticky looking there? That is definitely an indicator of leaky caps. Luckily, the damage is minor, not so bad. And let's just see the values of these. I probably have replacements. 1 microfarad, 50 volts, 10, 16, 1. All pretty standard stuff here. I'm pretty sure I have replacements for this, but I'm just gonna run this as is, and we'll just see if this thing is working. A little bit of green and crusties on that part there. I think this is for the video input side of this thing, and if we have issues with the video signals and whatnot, then we know where to look. It's gonna be these caps. But the video output is going to be this IC, and we don't have any of those caps at all over here. We just have, well, a lot of dirt, but we have normal tantalums. So unless anything is shorted, this thing should be fully functional. I am going to install one of the screws on this board just in case this is part of the ground plane, because I see the screw is attached to the ground plane down below, so I just want to make sure that's grounded properly. Right, with the power connected, I want to see if when I power this up, it tries to access the floppy drive. So power's on, and I can see the clock running on the front of this. I hit the power button. Oh, I'm just going to stop the fan because it's super annoying. The floppy drive accessed for a split second. I should just stick in a random disk. I think I have one sitting around here. Oh, it's clicking like an Amiga drive. That is so cool. That is something I didn't hear before, maybe over the noise of the fan, or it just wasn't doing it because the video board wasn't installed. That makes me believe if I stick a regular disk in here, this is not formatted or anything, it's going to try to access it. Let's try it. Yes. Okay, and it gave up, as it should. Well, that is freaking awesome. So I'm really glad that at some point I decided to buy a SCART cable, and I got one that wasn't crap, because most of them are, and I've never actually used this one, but this should allow us to connect up to the RetroTink so we can see what this thing is outputting. You can tell I've never actually used this because these little plastic covers are on here. So we'll set the RetroTink to SCART RGB first. We'll try it there. Okay, let's see what happens. Oh no, we're getting nothing. Oh, wait. Oh yeah, all right, signs of life. I'm gonna pop in this bad disk. Let's just see if it actually shows anything on screen. The disk spun for a second and then gave up. Okay. All right, I'll spend a moment to make those boot disks, those 3 boot disks, to see if that does anything. And if not, I have a whole lot of other disks to go through to see if I can get this thing showing a sign of life. I'll just throw this out there. Before you go to write any disks, make sure you format them first and check that they are good, because a lot of my 3.5-inch disks are bad. So I have a little script here that I can just double click on, and what it does is it just writes a blank MS-DOS 1.44 meg image to the 3.5-inch drive connected to my grease weasel, and it has retries of 0. So as soon as there's any kind of bad sectors, it will just abort, and I'll throw that disk away and try to find 3 good working disks. All right, that first disk formatted perfectly, and now I'm just writing it with the CAS FD1 raw, and this is writing to the 3.5-inch drive in my lab PC here. And with the Blue SCSI SD card in my computer, I'm just gonna use this HD0, so hard drive 0, and it's small, 75 megabytes or 70 megabytes or whatever this is. That may or may not be enough for this to work. I think the original drive I took out of this was like a 2 gigabyte drive, but we'll start with this small one to see if this disk I just made even boots, and then if it tries to initialize a hard drive, and then we could just try again until I get the right working combination of things. Let's power it on the computer. I don't have a keyboard or mouse hooked up, which may or may not be a problem, but I just want to see if it even starts to boot. It's boot. Oh, so the drive was accessing, and then it gave up. I'm just going to use this cleaning disk with a little 99% IPA on here. Let's get this cleaned out a little bit. Just needs to access the floppy disk. Does this power? I'm going to power cycle the computer or device or whatever this thing is. I guess it is technically a computer, isn't it? You know, oh, please remove the disk write protection. That's the first time we've seen any kind of a message on screen, isn't it? How fun is that? Okay, let's turn this back on, and I put that boot disk back in. So the disk stopped accessing. Oh, it started again. Oh, ho, ho, look at this, everyone. It's what I call freaking signs of life. Freaking signs of life. And I have a serial mouse here. I'll just get this connected up. I will need to power this off first. And while I'm at it, I'm going to plug this AT keyboard in as well. All right, here we go again. Oh, you know, I was pretty despondent. I didn't think this computer was ever going to work again because I didn't think any of the disks had been archived. But this thing should be able to be brought back to life. Not a Casablanca disk. Did that corrupt this disk because I didn't let it finish booting or something? Luckily, I can just make it again. No problems. While I'm making this disk, I just went to check what kind of video signal we're getting, and it is a NTSC video signal, 525i. So it's obvious this is a German product, and this had a PAL version. I don't know what changed exactly for the PAL version. Maybe different ROMs, or maybe it was the PIC microcontroller that gets checked at power on to set the video standard appropriately. Okay, here we go again with a fresh Casablanca Disk 1. Really? Okay, I'm going to power cycle this again. What could have changed that made this thing suddenly no longer be able to boot? We were so close. Huh. I mean, unless it's the floppy drive itself that's dirty or not working, I can try cleaning it again. Okay, so I reset the power. Now it says remove the write protection. That was for the cleaning disk. Let's put back in the disk I made. Oh, come on. I feel like the disk drive has failed. It sort of sounds like it's trying to access the disk a few times and then just gives up. Only other thing I'm thinking of is what if the blue SCSI is... Oh, the fan started spinning. What if, I don't know, it's trying to read this and that's why it's saying not a Casablanca disk. It's not even the floppy disk that's the problem. So I took out the SD card on that. Just leave that there and we'll try power cycling again. No, no help. All right, time for another floppy drive. Part of me is worried that this is somehow different or modified to be more Amiga-like. And obviously these are just normal PC disk drives. I have a whole bunch of them. Okay, power's off, by the way. You don't want to go touching this thing while it's powered up or even plugged into mains. All right, let's start with this Alps Electronics drive. It's not even accessing the drive. Oh, it is flashing, okay. Let's try this. Okay, we at least didn't get that not a Casablanca disk error. But then it read the disk for a second and then just stopped. So now it's doing the clicking. So it's acting like an Amiga drive in a way. Yeah, this has me kind of worried that maybe it's actually looking for an Amiga drive or some of the signaling's a little bit different. Because I don't think, like this one's set for drive select 0. We could try this one. I mean, I have tons and tons of floppy drives. Okay, so here we go. One set for drive select 0. Let's turn this all back on. Of course, the other drive was attempting to be accessed. So it makes me feel like drive select 1 is what it expects. Yeah, this one's not doing anything. So it's totally using like a standard PC drive. It's not clicking. It's not even trying to access. Well, you know what? That's actually obvious because there's a twist in the cable. So very much PC-like that in that regard. Okay, so we're going to try this black floppy drive now. Power on the system. Click from the disk drive. Aha. So what happened here? We were so close. We were so close. It booted up and everything. Just for grins, this disk might have gone bad, because the write process when using a raw disk image can't verify it. So I'm going to make another one and just validate 100% that this disk works. And I'm going to clean my drive on my lab machine as well, just in case that's the problem. And fresh disk in the drive. And I'm going to format this one first, which does the full verify pass, just to make sure the disk is good. It didn't format. Interesting. Let's try the one that I had the Casablanca OS written to. See if that one formats. Aha. That one's got a bad track 0 as well. Okay, I've just tried a bunch of disks. All of them fail. This drive must have died. All right, here's my plan. I got my other grease weasel out and I have actually connected it directly to the floppy drive in the Casablanca. So I'm going to power it from this power supply. Obviously this cable from the motherboard's disconnected. We're going to write the disk images in this machine itself. And hopefully one of these floppies that were all formatting bad are going to work in here. Let's see if it does it. Yes, it does. And this is one of the ones that didn't format in my lab computer. So that 3.5-inch drive has died. It's been acting up a lot lately. I've had issues formatting disks, but I just kind of assumed I had a bunch of bad disks. But with the ones that just didn't format, I didn't throw them away. I thought maybe there's something wrong with that drive. The fact that it was just failing continually just gave me a little bit of a pause. But the fact is, we wrote a good Casablanca boot disk on it a moment ago, and that worked. So it's sort of like an intermittent failure. It's kind of an odd one. Luckily, I have tons and tons of floppy drives, so I will just find another one that works as well as that one did, and I will use that. I liked that one specifically because it read and wrote Macintosh floppies perfectly, the 800K and 400K disks, and not every PC drive is capable of reading and writing Mac floppy disks. So I'm just going to spend a moment here to format the disks and make all 3 of the Casablanca boot disks so we can actually get this thing up and running. These kinds of issues, by the way, I just leave them in the video. I know people rather I edit this stuff out, but this is the reality of working with this old hardware, especially with disks. Things go wrong, and my lab computer setup, which is supposed to be the reliable thing that I can use to make disks, it breaks as well, and it has in this case. So I'm going to spend a moment and make all 3 of the floppy disks, and we can see if we can get this thing up and running. All 4 disks are written. I realized there was only CAS FD1, 3, and 4, but there was another zip file that said something in German, disk 2. So I assumed that was the CAS FD2. So I wrote all 4 disks, formatted and verified on this drive. Let's try disk 1. All right, here we go, powering up the system. I really hope this works. I mean, we saw it working, so I'd really like to be able to get to that OS screen again. Uh-oh. Oh, come on. Well, first of all, why is it blue? And second of all, I can't believe it doesn't work. I mean, we could try these other disks, I suppose. I don't know, CAS disk 2. Power cycle the computer, have disk 2 in there. Why is it blue, though? It's not even a bad connection on the SCART cable, or is it? No, it's not. I'm going to power cycle the retro tank. I mean, this is obviously an unrelated problem. Well, it's pretty upsetting here. We had this thing booting and now it's not working again. Why? I've done nothing different. I used the same disk image and everything. I'm going to go back to SCART RGB and no, it's kind of a blue tint now. It was 100% not blue before. Just for fun, I'm going to unplug the keyboard and the mouse because we didn't have those connected up when I first tried this. You know, disk 4, which is what's in here now, is somehow booting. Weird. Great, and I unplugged the keyboard and mouse. Is it something to do with that? Could that somehow be related? So I plug in the keyboard. Doesn't seem to work. Usually serial mice will not work if you plug them in after the system has booted. So I fully assume, oh, it actually works. Wow. This is actually a font disk. This isn't even the OS disk. So that could explain what's going on theoretically. And it just went back to this screen. Incidentally, if I go to SCART composite video, we don't get that blue effect anymore. So that really seems to only be on the RGB input. This could easily be a fault on the retro tank. All right, back to the drawing board. Having read through that thread some more, I really didn't see anyone saying these are the disks you should use to set up the entire system. And it's not like there's a README that says, hey, you know, these are the setup disks that come with the system for installing a new hard drive. So I'll probably just make some of these disks here, install disk, and hopefully that works a little bit better than these presumably font disks. All right, so I made a new disk. It's the setup disk, and definitely if the keyboard is connected, at least this keyboard here, I will get that message that says not a Casablanca disk every time. So with unplugging it, but the mouse still connected, it does get to this screen. So let's see what happens if I try doing English. Do you wish to install the system now? Yes, we do. Disk contains, well, we want to install, not update. I just picked 1.5. The ROMs say 1.6. Hard drive will be deleted. Okay, that's fine. Let's see if it can work with a 74 meg hard drive image. I am still confused about this blue tint that's all over the video. I have power cycled the RetroTink, replugged the cable on both ends, wiggled the cable, touched everything. Nothing changes the video image at all. And I've gone through the menus on the RetroTink. I don't think there's any way to even make these adjustments. So I'm not really sure what happened here. I'm assuming it's something that went wrong on this device itself, but the composite video output's still working, so I suppose that's something. Please remove the floppy disk. The system will restart. It is able to sense that I've taken the disk out as well. That's cool. Oh, it's booting off the hard drive image. All right. There it is. We're booted up. Land/country. Okay, we'll switch this over to English. I think this is the clock on the front of the unit. Yes, probably is. Okay. Video settings. I was hoping there was maybe something for us to adjust the color output to fix this blue tint. Doesn't appear to be the case. You can move this up and down. I actually feel, see it says front and rear. We'd be seeing the video output from whatever connected device we had right now. And it will allow you to select whether you probably have composite or CVBS. Those are the two inputs, auto gain control on or off. Actually, what kind of amazes me here is the entire video editing suite fits on one floppy disk. Kind of makes me feel that these other disks, these font disks here, just add some extra capabilities to this, like allow you to do titling and overlays. Audio quality, CD quality, size, small, standard, large, quality. Oh, I see. Oh, look at our capacity because the hard drive image is so tiny. 0.5 minutes, 30 seconds of recording. That's kind of hilarious, actually. So maybe I need to make a new hard drive image that's a little bit larger. What I'm curious about is I was thinking that there would be somewhere that I could type stuff in. I wanted to see about the keyboard working or not. So far, I see nothing when it comes to typing. Now, titling I can't access because I don't have any footage on here. I suppose I could try to record just a tiny bit. Let's just record a little bit of black. No video signal. Okay. It's got my number. Oh, I can hook up the test pattern generator. Okay. Well, that's odd. Wonder what happened here. Okay, so I'm gonna set it for composite video now, and I'll try plugging this in. We lose sync. Weird. The RetroTink thinks it's getting 525p as opposed to normal in-released video, which, yeah, that's, I don't think possible. But it's weird, if I unplug the composite video input, it will switch back to interlaced mode. Yeah, 625i. Oh, we're in PAL mode right now. Oh, you know what? I'm wondering if the issue is we're stuck in a PAL mode. Even though I have this set for English, what I'm going to do is we're going to power cycle this, and maybe now that I've set it for English, it's going to switch back into NTSC mode. It could well be that the floppy disk that I did the installation from was a European release, which is why it defaulted to German. And it might also be why it defaults into PAL, which I think it's switching into PAL right now. I think it just switched. Yep, there we are, 50 hertz, we're in PAL mode. So it's kind of my assumption that it's very unhappy when I plug the NTSC video signal into the front input because we're in PAL mode right now. All right, I went ahead and wrote a new disk. It was like version 3.1 English. Hopefully that's NTSC. I also put a 1 gig file on the BlueSCSI. So if it does work to install the OS and it is NTSC, then I can basically use a larger hard drive image so we can actually capture some video. Hopefully this thing boots. The keyboard is not connected because we know that keeps it from booting for whatever reason. And I was just thinking about it while I was making the disk image. Of course, when I plugged in the NTSC video into the front, it wasn't happy because it was expecting PAL video. So far so good. I think we're definitely still in NTSC mode. This disk contains this. We're going to do install. Sorry, it's 3.0.1. Hard drive will be erased. Sounds good to me. Anyhow, even though I was trying to capture the video through this adapter through the S-Video jack, of course it was expecting PAL video, not NTSC, which is why the color wasn't working, but then I don't know why it was going into that weird mode. Probably a side effect of feeding NTSC video into this thing set to PAL mode. A little bit of reading in that thread incidentally mentioned that there were adapters that plugged into the S-Video jacks on this thing to allow you to feed composite video directly into it and also get the composite video out. We obviously have composite video out for the video display, the SCART output, but I have a feeling the video out that's on here on the board for the S-Video jack isn't necessarily the same with the whole user interface, although it might actually be. I'll probably grab a cable in a moment and plug the S-Video jack into the RetroTink, and we can see if we have, well, the same UI in elements. Okay, keep your fingers crossed. This thing actually runs in NTSC mode here. We'll know pretty quickly, because as the system starts to boot, you see the borders around the edge. They will change if it goes into PAL mode. Oh, good. We're still in NTSC mode right now. And it is booting off the Blue SCSI. You can see the hard drive LED blinking away. Oh, this is good. This is a good sign. Uh-oh, it's changing video modes. Oh no, there we go. We're back in PAL again. So unless this particular version of the firmware has a way to adjust that, this isn't gonna work. Yep, we're in PAL mode. So it looks like they've changed up the icons a little bit. Let's just go through the settings. Maybe we have some differences. Demo disk register. There's that version number. Oh, we have a little bit more stuff here. Shows our serial number, which is embedded into the PIC there. ROM version 2.0, PIC version 1.11, 16 megabyte options. Okay, whatever that means. And our program software version. Okay, total capacity, 6.7 minutes. Not a lot, actually. I'm pretty sure the disk image is over a gigabyte. I think it's like 1.5 gigs or something like that. Image size, oh, it supports 16:9 now. Oh, audio quality, 10 minutes of audio, 4.7 minutes of video. And this looks exactly the same as the other one. Delete, trim. Don't really see anything here for switching video mode. That's what I was looking for. Saving project. Front, rear, AGC on or off. There's no S-Video selection any longer. It's interesting. I wonder if it's like auto detect. Well, we can try feeding this video into it and see what happens. No, same problem. Freaks out because it's just not expecting NTSC video. So I went ahead and grabbed my Tektronix PAL signal generator. So it does test patterns in PAL. It's running right now. I have it connected to this cable. So what do we get if we connect this up now? Oh yeah, there it is working. So these are the various test patterns this thing has. Oddly enough, this particular test pattern has just red on the lower half. I don't know why, but it is obviously working. So there's the video input fully functional, which implies at this point we can record some stuff. It's synchronizing. So clip is S1 and it's very busy recording here. Cool. Stop. And let's record a little bit of this one. So I assume it's going to be S2. Yes, it is. Stop. And we'll record a little bit of this one. These are fascinating test patterns. Fascinating. Okay, so theoretically, we can edit. There's our 3 clips that I've recorded. Can I name these? Oh, it's an on-screen keyboard. So maybe it doesn't even support an external keyboard. I mean, it doesn't even boot properly with it connected. How funny is that? Okay. So I guess we just add these to the timeline. Insert where? In front or behind? Okay. Now we'll hit play. And we'll have our clips. A few seconds of this. A few seconds of that. Huh. Now if we go back to menu, we can do transitions. I don't know if any of these are even loaded onto here. I mean, there were other discs that I didn't load, but between these two, spin back. So can we play this? Or sample it? Oh, did it say unrendered effect? Oh yes, let's do render here. Rendering video. 68040, 25 megahertz. We have to remember that the faster versions of this were like 33 megahertz. And then there was a version that was 68060. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. But we have to remember when this thing was, in use in the late 90s, I think this whole non-linear video editing system was really cutting edge. As far as people being able to do this at home, like this was pretty fancy stuff. Very, very fancy stuff. And my assumption is that this thing really is working at sort of, broadcast level video quality, at least when you use the highest quality for video recording. It's probably MPEG-2 or maybe motion JPEG actually, but it supports all the interlaced modes properly because, of course, interlaced video was king back in the late 90s, and that's when this thing was designed. Definitely no Amiga multitasking was available on this thing. You were pretty much stuck waiting for it to do its thing. I'm not really seeing anything that looks Amiga-like on here, except maybe these fonts. Don't these fonts look a little bit like Topaz, I suppose, in the original Amiga OS? And would have been my assumption that this thing was licensed to use Amiga OS and whichever libraries and fonts that were included with it. And I can see as it does this rendering, hard drive LED is blinking. Is the CPU warm? Let's just touch the CPU. No, CPU is pretty cool to the touch. I mean, it's warm, it's running, but it's not hot at all. Much cooler than, say, a 486 would be, contemporary to this machine at least. Right, now if we hit play or preview, or well, I'll just hit play since I rendered it, what's it gonna look like? Ooh! Wow, and preview? Oh, it does a miniature view of it, I see. Oh, okay, look at that. Pretty slick, I gotta say. It took a while to render, but it's obviously saved to the drive. And we're going to have a bunch of other things available on here. Cone. Ooh, there's page turns. Okay, I've switched modes. I want to look at page turn now. So we're going to look at this with the page turn. We're going to do the render again. Rendering video. While it does the extremely slow render, these are all the discs that are in here. Blue Box version 2 must be some kind of extra effects, bonus effects. I guess these are the font discs that we talked about. We have several Casablanca effects discs, and I wouldn't be surprised if maybe those are compatible with all the different OSs as well. So I could install these and it would install on top of the existing OS. ProDAD is actually something I had on one of my older video editors, Adrian. It was just basically some more transitions and things like that. Special effects, various installer discs, video spice rack, Monument Titler, version 1.6 upgrade, disc 1 and 2, something called PC Link. Maybe that allowed you to load images from PC disks onto the system, so you could have like still frames, JPEGs, and things like that. Version 3.0.10, that's the one I just installed, and a couple ProDAD things here. So it doesn't look like through all the archival work that folks have done that any NTSC versions of the OS have been archived, which makes sense. This thing probably sold really well over in Europe, in Germany specifically, and probably not super well here in North America. So unless one of these installer just happens to be an NTSC version that's just not labeled as such, I think it's pretty much impossible for me to really test this thing out any further than I was going to do here. I was going to try to do some video editing just to kind of like show what you could do with this by putting some actual clips into it. But down here in the basement, all of the video equipment, the analog video equipment I have, VCRs and cameras and stuff, it's all NTSC. So unfortunately, we know for sure that you can't feed NTSC video into this thing while it's set to PAL mode as it is right now. So unless someone can find the NTSC version of the operating system run on here, I can't do a whole lot of testing versus beyond what I've been able to do here with the test pattern generator. It's still rendering, and I've been talking for several minutes. This one is taking a lot longer than that 3D effect, and I guess the page turn just has a lot more going on. It's got to deinterlace the video and then do that whole effect. Interesting that it's not something that it could do in real time. Okay, the render is done. Let's hit play on this. Let's look at that awesome page turn effect. Woo, cutting edge. All that time, literally just for that. But it still looks pretty cool, I have to say. Let's watch that one more time. Whoosh. I got whoosh. I'm making the sound effect for it. Very cool. So I think if we do finish, that's going to output to tape. Render storyboard, record to VCR. I think we just hit that. And now it's going to do it without the UI elements. Oh, please switch. Okay. It's in pause mode right now. You can see there's no dot crawl. Start. There it goes. You probably want to add like a blank leader to the beginning. That way, you don't record the UI elements. There's our cut. And we should have our transition in a moment. There it is, looking awesome. And that's it. That's our entire project. There it is. Effects entirely rendered. Yeah, so it just tells you here if you need to do any rendering. I guess if you do any titling and whatever, it will allow you just to finish up the rendering right there. 18 seconds, that's what we just did. Looking at the audio stuff, looks like you'd record audio separately so you can overlay it on top of the video, probably things like that. This allows you to set up the mixing and stuff, so the different levels, I guess the camera or the recorded footage, what you recorded on the microphone, maybe you can overlay music on top of it as well, possibly from floppy disks, things like that, or you can just record the music separately off of like a CD player or something like that. Oh yeah, and then we have the audio track. So these are the 3 audio clips recorded when we recorded the footage, and then we can do microphone overlays and we can do audio. And I'm sure it doesn't have to be microphone. There's no mic input on this, it just has RCA jacks. So you just do it through a mixer or whatever and have up to 3 audio tracks that you can edit and mix together. And just from a titling perspective, because I didn't poke through here, just so you can see what that looks like. Color roll, horizontal roll, I don't know, just the usual stuff. Let's enter some text. Wow, the fact that you can't use a keyboard is just terrible. Okay, so this is the color picker. So changing the text to red. Here are the fonts that are available just on the default installation. Benny Bold. Don't see anything that looks Amiga-like except for maybe Letter Gothic. These are probably TrueType fonts, I would imagine. They seem to be scalable. Now this is horizontal roll, so theoretically, I think you have to render this again, and the text should scroll across the video. Wow. Stuff we take for granted now. I mean, I edit on DaVinci Resolve, as I mentioned, and I use a GPU. Everything is real time. I can layer on a whole bunch of effects, and even that is real time. And we're talking at 4K, and this is at just regular PAL video resolution. How could it be so slow just to render some fonts? I guess what you do is you just sort of do all the layout and everything. Then you do the final render on that record to tape page we were on earlier. Allow that to just render for hours or whatever it takes. You'll go away, come back when it's done. I'm blown away. I figured the text rendering would have been way quicker than like the page turn thing, but nah, not at the speed it's going here. I don't feel like waiting for it, but well, let's check the preview. There's the text. Oh, it's along the bottom. Oh, that's interesting. That doesn't look so great, does it? Ah, there we go, wide position. So let's put it up near the top. And we'll do preview now. Preview's effective. I mean, it's extremely low res, but you get an idea of what you're about to do, especially when that render takes like 30 minutes just to put some text over the video. Other things we have available to us, vertical roll, so you can do like credits and stuff like that, subtitles, multicolor rolls, free position, color roll, all the usual stuff here. Funny how color is spelled with the American spelling there, C-O-L-O-R. I clicked on a filter button, and it looks like we do have some filters available to us as well, so you can do some effects on top of the video. Crosswave, dynamic range, fade in and out, flash bulbs, mirrors, line arts, I mean, all sorts of stuff here. Obviously, all of this would be incredibly slow and need to render as well. Solarize, telescope, wave. Let's just try the negative one for fun. So there's just inversion of that particular clip, and it looks like it applies to the whole clip, although you could probably hit this range here and maybe select exactly what it applies to, I suppose. Yeah, there's in and out points. So my assumption is somehow we move this. We can set the in point, then we can set the out point. Oh, right, it can go across clips as well. Well, that's kind of cool, actually. So like that. And I'm sure we hit play, that doesn't do anything because it has to render first. Can you apply multiple effects at once? No, you cannot. And one last thing on this page allows us to like trim, empty scenes, special, slow motion, fast motion, reverse still. This thing seemed to have quite a bit, considering this whole thing fits on one floppy disk. We have to remember the entire OS and the entire editing application. It's actually kind of impressive, it really is. For me, who is used to video editing on modern stuff, this is actually completely usable. I wouldn't want to edit like an entire video on here just because of the limitations of the way it all, like the timeline is and stuff. It's super primitive. But on the other hand, I think for a normal user, if you had this at home, it wouldn't be that difficult for you to get up to speed on this thing. Once you have a lot of patience with all the rendering and stuff, definitely this thing does work. Just a little bit of our footage here, and it looks like we've used up just a little bit of our hard drive, which is fully expected. All right, I think that's going to be it for this video. So what have I learned? Well, first off, the Casablanca works with BlueSCSI, so that's awesome. I don't think anyone was talking about it on that thread, and that's because, of course, people were talking about this years ago before the BlueSCSI. So if you have one of these, you can use a BlueSCSI on it. Another thing I've learned is don't connect the keyboard. If you plug in the keyboard like I did, well, all your disks no longer boot. So that's an odd behavior. Maybe there's like a key combination that gets held down that it thinks it's booting some other kind of disks or something. I don't know, but it just obviously wasn't happy with any floppy disk while the keyboard was connected. Just a little tidbit while editing. If I plugged the small little white keyboard into the computer while it was already booted up, it actually crashed the system with this error. But then I found if I grabbed another keyboard, I picked its HP one, the computer worked perfectly with it plugged in, it booted fine, and I could type as well. So it seems like all my problems were actually caused by that small white keyboard. So just beware of which keyboard you use because it can cause major issues with the system. Another thing I've learned is this machine here boots up into NTSC mode, which is almost certainly contained inside of that PIC microcontroller. That's like the NVRAM of the computer. But it unfortunately is overridden by the operating system, which just reverts back to PAL mode. And all of the disks that have been saved obviously are PALs, we already talked about. So there's no way to really use this thing in NTSC land. Unless there's a hidden feature somewhere to switch this thing to NTSC, maybe in the OS, like a key combination or secret place you click or something like that, like a service mode. If anyone knows about that, definitely put a comment down below, because if that's the case, then I'll probably actually try to edit up a video on this thing just for fun, just to really kind of, well, put some real footage into it and then try to exercise my chops on old school video editing and see what that process is like exactly. Next thing I learned is that you could just use a normal serial mouse on this. So if you have one of these, then just get any old serial mouse. It's just a generic clone one, and it completely worked perfectly. Another little tidbit is the floppy drive on here is completely bog standard. Remember, I hooked up some of my extra ones, and they just work drive select one. So it's just like a normal PC 1.44 meg disk. And I was able to use the grease weasel to write all those raw flux images without any special parameters. I just literally wrote them with, well, nothing. I just pointed to the raw files and made disks that absolutely worked, as long as the keyboard wasn't connected. And then the last thing is that if you're going to try to input composite video into this, just get a little S-video cable and break it out with 2 RCA jacks like I've done here. This is actually for my Commodore 1702 monitor, but it totally works for inputting the composite video into the front input jack on this thing, and that just works. So that's going to be it for the MacroSystem Casablanca. This thing is an interesting piece of hardware, very much a moment in time. It's cool, the lineage with the Amiga, but as you saw, it's completely hidden at this point. You can't even tell this thing is even related to the Amiga, even if that's running on the underlying operating system. I have to be honest, when I started making this video and the hard drive died, I really didn't think this video was going to go anywhere, and I thought I'd never be able to get this thing working again, and it was just going to be scrap parts. So I gotta admit, I'm kind of pleased that A, it works, and that I was able to find all those disk images. So a huge thanks to the community of folks on those threads who got all those disk images together and was trying to archive and keep all the information in one spot. It's really just the lack of NTSC disks that's throwing a monkey wrench into me fully using this thing. I mean, not for actual video production, but at least to test it out and see if it works. So if anyone's able to find any ads for this thing, even if they're from Germany or other countries, so we can kind of get an idea of like what this thing cost back in the day, I'd be very curious, because it feels like hardware encoding and decoding a video and nonlinear editing in just a little easy use box like this seems like a pretty cool thing, to be honest. And as far as I'm aware, all the ones I've seen have this removable hard drive sled on them. So I guess the idea would be is if you were using this thing, you could have multiple hard drive sleds. These are just standard things. They were easily available back in the day. And you could have different sleds for your different projects and different OS versions and stuff like that, which all seems kind of neat, actually. If there's anything else you'd like to know about this machine, definitely let me know down below. I will upload the hard drive images that I've made on the BlueSCSI along with the ROM dumps up to probably archive.org. So if you want to download those and try to figure out how the encryption works on the ROMs or what's on the hard drive image or anything else about it, then yeah, you can go check it out there. Maybe people will be able to decode a little bit about that. I mean, it'd be pretty sweet if we could somehow figure out how to load different OSs on here. Maybe FreeBSD. I mean, I know that pretty much runs on everything, right? So maybe it could run on this as well. So yeah, check the links out down below. And of course, all the links to the threads and forums and all that other stuff I'll put down below as well. So that's going to be that. So huge thanks to my supporters, my members, all the folks who support me and make it possible I do this full time. Huge thanks to my subscribers. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. It makes a huge difference. It seems that the view apocalypse due to ad blockers on YouTube is for the most part over. So views have kind of returned to normal, which makes me as a creator feel a lot better because I really felt like no one was watching my videos because the views, tanked. And anyways, I won't get into any of that. I think that's going to be that. So stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.